In 1857, the Indian subcontinent exploded into open rebellion against British rule. This uprising represented the violent climax of nearly a century of mounting systemic friction between the East India Company and the people it governed. At the center of the storm was the Mughal court in Delhi. The aging emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar served as the symbolic figurehead of the resistance, while the actual military operations were commanded by a former British sepoy, Bakht Khan. Tasked with crushing this massive multi-front insurrection was the British Governor-General, Lord Canning. The immediate trigger that brought these forces to blows was a piece of military technology, the introduction of the new pattern 1853 Enfield rifle to the East India Company's army. To load the rifle, soldiers had to bite open a paper cartridge. Word quickly spread through the ranks that these new cartridges were greased with animal fat, specifically tallow from cows and lard from pigs. This directly violated the core religious prohibitions of both Hindu and Muslim sepoys. The cartridge controversy ignited the fire, but the explosive material, deep structural grievances, had been accumulating for nearly a century. The army was already fracturing from within. The General Service Enlistment Act of 1856 required sepoys to serve overseas, which many high-caste Hindus believed would pollute their religious standing. At the same time, the company withdrew the bhata, a crucial foreign service allowance. Promotion and pay were severely restricted by race, capping the advancement of native soldiers. Historian S. Gopal defined the sepoy of this era as a peasant in uniform, a soldier bearing the exact same economic and social anxieties as his family back in the village. Those anxieties were driven by aggressive administrative expansion under the previous Governor-General, Lord Dalhousie. Dalhousie aggressively enforced the doctrine of lapse. Under this policy, if an Indian ruler died without a natural male heir, the British refused to recognize an adopted successor. The state's sovereignty was erased, and its lands were absorbed directly into the British Empire. The most devastating blow came in 1856 with the annexation of Awadh. The British deposed the Nawab on grounds of misgovernance, dispossessing the local talukdars, the landed aristocracy. Crucially, Awadh was the primary recruiting ground for the Bengal army. By erasing the political sovereignty of the sepoys' homeland and stripping away their military privileges, the East India Company turned its own army into its most lethal threat. Outside the barracks, the civilian population was buckling under severe land revenue policies. Systems like the permanent, Rayatwari, and Mahalwari settlements extracted exorbitant taxes, driving the peasantry into massive debt and forcing many to surrender their ancestral lands. The first physical break in the chain of command occurred across the region. While peasant debt surged upward, traditional Indian industries cratered. The influx of cheap, machine-made British textiles flooded the market, ruining local artisans and devastating generations of skilled handloom weavers. Accompanying this economic extraction was a steady drumbeat of social reform and missionary activity. Legislation intervening in traditional Hindu customs, alongside aggressive Christian proselytizing, convinced vast segments of the population that the British intended to eradicate their traditions. By early 1857, isolated grievances among kings, soldiers, peasants, and artisans merged into a unified anti-company sentiment. The first physical break in the chain of command occurred on March 29, 1857, at the Barrackpore cantonment, when a sepoy named Mangal Pandey fired upon his British officers. Pandey was hanged on April 8th. The execution was intended to restore discipline, but instead it established him as a martyr among the ranks. The tensions snapped on May 10th in Meerut. Following the imprisonment of 85 soldiers who had refused the greased cartridges, the entire garrison rose up, killed their officers, and broke their comrades out of the local jail. That night, the mutinous regiments immediately began a rapid march toward the Mughal capital of Delhi.
On the morning of May 11th, the sepoys breached the city walls. They captured the administrative centers and demanded that Bahadur Shah Zafar assume leadership and declare himself the Emperor of Hindustan. This tactical decision escalated the crisis. By securing the ancient seat of power and forcing a sovereign head to endorse their uprising, a localized military mutiny evolved into a massive political revolution. The rebellion radiated across North and Central India. Without a central command structure directing the troop movements, the war fragmented into regional campaigns led by displaced royalty and local chieftains. In Kanpur, the deposed heir of the Maratha Empire, Nana Sahib, seized control. Alongside his commander, Tantia Tope, he expelled the British garrison. In recently annexed Awadh, Begum Hazrat Mahal rallied the displaced talukdars and sepoys in Lucknow, locking British forces into a sustained urban siege. To the south, in Jhansi, Rani Lakshmibai took the field to defend her kingdom against the doctrine of lapse. Meanwhile, in Bihar, the octogenarian landlord Kunwar Singh mounted a mobile guerrilla campaign against company troops. Coordinating an uprising across hundreds of miles without a formal telegraph or courier system required a clandestine grassroots network. Couriers passed items like a lotus flower or a simple chapati from village to village. The arrival of these objects served as a silent signal to prepare for the impending revolt. These regional leaders and clandestine symbols created a wide front of resistance that relied on cultural networks rather than a centralized general staff. Despite its ferocity, the rebellion contained severe structural limitations. The uprising remained largely confined to northern and central provinces, failing to spread effectively into South India. The rebels also faced a lack of unity. Several major Indian rulers actively allied with the British, supplying troops and vital logistical support to crush the uprising. The insurgents fought with a fragmented ideology and outdated weaponry against an industrialized empire. The British utilized their railway network to move troops rapidly and relied on the telegraph to coordinate counteroffensives. The military response was systematic and brutal. To recapture Delhi, British forces subjected the city to a devastating artillery siege, culminating in a massive infantry assault that shattered the rebel stronghold. With the capital broken, the rebellion's leadership was dismantled. Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar was captured, tried for treason, and exiled to Rangoon, ending 3 centuries of the Mughal dynasty. The regional commanders fought to the bitter end. Rani Lakshmibai fell in battle, and Tantia Tope waged a guerrilla war until he was captured and executed in 1859. Individual courage could not overcome the systemic and logistical advantages of an industrialized empire, leading to the rebellion's defeat. The physical suppression of the mutiny immediately sparked a century-long war over its historical narrative. In the early 20th century, Indian nationalist V.D. Savarkar defined the uprising as the First War of Independence. This directly challenged the official British stance, championed by figures like John Lawrence, who categorized it as a mere military mutiny. This matrix shows the nuance introduced by later academics. R.C. Majumdar argued the revolt was not truly national, while S.N. Sen proposed it began as a fight for religion and ended as a war for freedom. The classification of 1857 carries immense weight beyond academic circles. The specific historical lens chosen dictates the ideological foundation of the modern Indian state and its primary origin story. The ultimate administrative consequence of the bloodshed was the Government of India Act 1858. This legislation dissolved the East India Company entirely, stripping the corporation of all governing power. Direct administrative control over India was transferred to the British Crown, inaugurating the era of the British Raj under Queen Victoria. While the 1857 rebellion was defeated militarily, its shockwaves shattered a centuries-old corporate empire and planted the seeds of the national liberation movement.